So, Larry, thank you for conversation. Last time we spoke, it was before the election. Now it is Donald Trump is in the Oval Office, which is something that you stated did not want to see happen. Uh,
Mm.
has Donald Trump has he fulfilled your fears?
Um, yes,
Mm.
he has. Um, are you asking me why that might be?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, he, all of the executive orders, the avalanche of executive orders that have come from him, um, shouldn't be too much of a surprise. They're basically um, a reflection of his own desires during the campaign. So there's not any great surprises in the executive orders. The executive orders have come quickly, and he had actually implied during the campaign, not implied, but actually be quite clear that things were going to change very quickly. Now, obviously, there were things that did not happen, like this, obviously the cessation of hostilities between Ukraine and Russia. But he has acted quickly, and these number of executive orders have flooded the system, so to speak, made it overwhelming for the media to cover it effectively, cover any of them effectively. They focused on certain ones that they felt were important, but the others have really gone by the wayside because the media just can't handle all of that information at once. That has made me that has realized my fears, um, that many of these that he's basically trying to revolutionize the system writ large, by using his executive powers, his right to issue a lot of orders, and a lot of them are not being attentively addressed. And so
For instance,
the public is unaware largely about the effect of all of these executive orders, and the media is, I think, going through. They're 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 challenged, to say the least. So,
is there an executive order that wasn't in the media coverages, but it is important that you are trying to talk about?
well, that is a difficult question to answer because there's so many of them, and so many are important in different ways. I can throw out some examples. The order just recently, actually today, right now. Let's look at things that are happening right now.
Mm.
Okay. There was an executive order regarding transgender women regarding sports. Okay. Not being able to participate in sports. And if they do, then there is a cutoff of federal aid to schools that are taking federal aid. Okay, so which are a lot. Okay, that's just a recent one. Um, and the recent, just yesterday, we're talking. In the last couple of days, we're talking about the Department of Education being dismantled. That is the beginnings. Okay, the executive order begins the process of doing so. This also has constitutional implications. We're talking about USAID, that also
Mm.
attempt to try to subsume it under the State Department. Um, and so you can go on, and you can go on. There's like I said, hundreds. I think there's I'm not sure right now what the count is because the count keeps on going up pretty quickly each day, but we're talking an overwhelming number of them.
Mm.
So, yeah,
Linda McMahon is in
yeah,
charge of the education department, and
that's correct.
President Trump said that her job is to relinquish herself of one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah, that's right. That's
So
her job. Her job is to put herself out of work. Yes.
yeah, so in fact, President Trump is saying that uh, the federal state doesn't need education.
Yeah. Yeah. To be more specific about what this means, the Department of Education, formally speaking, became a department on its own in
Mm,
1979 under President Carter.
mm,
Now, before that, it was also a department. It was part of what they call Health Education and Welfare,
mm,
okay, HEW, before the Department of Education, and that actually began under the Eisenhower administration.
mm,
Now, the Department of Education has a specific role. Now, a lot of Americans probably think, oh, well, there are a lot of people on, especially those on the right, have always wanted the Department of Education to disappear, to dismantle it. So this has been a long-standing Republican desire.
but why?
Now,
What
now
does?
that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing I'm going to get to here is that the Department of Education, um, they see as they believe it should all be returned. Everything should be returned to the states, and that that it's a unnecessary intrusion of federal power into what should be a state responsibility. But the thing is that if you look at what the Department of Education does, it protects the those who have or actually serves those who have disabilities. Okay, and a lot of money goes towards those who have disabilities to mainstream them into the classroom, to give them the necessary support that they need to address or whatever disabilities happen to be there happen to be. That would go away. Okay. Now, a lot of times, if you go into the States, this happens a lot. People with these issues the families will try to get them addressed within the classroom, but sometimes they'll encounter administrative school administrative resistance. You might get the state to resist and so forth. And then it can go to the federal government where the federal government steps in and says, hey, yeah, this is something that needs to be addressed. And you really have a responsibility to do so. Well, if the Department of Education is eliminated, then you won't have that protection, that federal protection, that federal level that you can then appeal to get your grievances met. Department of Education also deals with those who have in certain districts where the property taxes are low. Okay, because the financing of schools depends on property taxes, and in wealthy communities, there's plenty of money in order, but in other ones, there's not. Well, the federal government, where there is poor students aren't getting the necessary education that they deserve, the federal government can then intervene I should say, they can finance, okay, where there is a lack of finance, okay, on the local level. So that goes away as well. So you also have also civil rights, equality of between the races, cities, and so forth. That protection also goes away. So this is something. So there is concrete repercussions for the elimination of the Department of Education.
Okay, so what is the purpose? What is the point of all this cutting, scaling back, Elon Trump having his own quasi department?
Mm-hmm.
Just raging through the public sector.
Right,
Uh,
right.
what is the point of that?
Okay, the point is partly now. This is where it becomes a rather a rather a. It's not clear. Okay, one thing is that you could say that there was a scaling back of the welfare state, or the the sort of the government involvement in the economy in assisting those who need assistance, the vulnerable. That this is something that has been a part of the scene since FDR, since
The New Deal.
the New Deal. And now the thing is you might think that this is a Trump attempt to roll back to before the New Deal.
Mm.
But this is rather simplistic in its thinking. Partly, yes, this is true. But I don't think, for example, before the New Deal, you didn't have Social Security.
Mm.
Okay.
You didn't have it.
Trump, you did not have it.
Mm.
Trump has at least not at this point, and during the campaign, he didn't either, saying he's going to get rid of Social Security. Okay, or he's going to privatize it. This is also a Republican talking point too, a Republican desire, and that Trump has actually been at odds with the Republican Party in this way. Okay, and so it's a little bit simplistic to say he wants to basically strip away all New Deal programs. Now, with this said, as I see things unfolding at the present time, I'm noticing that Project 2025 is taking hold more and more. In other words, he's actually going down the road of fulfilling a lot of the promises that Project 2025 wishes, and a lot of the people that he has selected since he won the presidency and has been assigning people to positions do have. I mean, a lot of them do agree with Project 2025. Indeed, his vice president himself is one of the biggest supporters of Project 2025. So,
What was Project 2025?
Project 2025 is a Republican program for the basic for a radical reconstruction of the federal government, the cultural landscape. Even I would dare say the political system itself.
Mm.
And so this was something that was a vision of what could happen if they get back into office, specifically with Trump getting back into office. Now, Trump has distanced himself from this. Okay, but at the same time, distancing himself from this, there is a specter that he is going to actually realize this. A perfect example is Elon Musk with Doge. Okay, and you see this with the Department of Education. You see this with USAID. You see this indeed with the recently of the FBI and the CIA. Particularly the idea of civil servants, right? You have political appointees, then you have civil servants that are hired based on their expertise. Well, he is now looking at mass firings, and maybe we'll get to that a little bit later. But anyway, there is a he's not, for example, going back to this. He's not, for example, going to say that, at least so far, he's not, getting rid of some of the more popular, like Medicaid and Medicare, okay, in the healthcare system. Okay, Medicaid didn't exist at that time; it occurred later. Okay, but Medicare, okay, which is healthcare for the elderly. He's not saying get rid of that. Okay, not now. Okay, I say not now because I do have a lot of suspicion as to what the future holds. So he has pushed back. There is conflict within the Republican Party. I mean, you look at it and you think, oh, they're just acquiescing. They're just, basically going to do the president's bidding. They're all Trumpian, and but there is still tension within the Republican Party on foreign policy, on domestic policy, and this is an example. Trump has been seen more as a spender. Okay, that he wanted to get rid of the ceiling, the debt ceiling. Okay, and that was a pushback from more conservative fiscal Republicans. So there is that, and I'm wondering how that's going to evolve over time.
Yeah. And as there are tensions between Trump and the Republican lawmakers, there are also elections in just 2 years, midterm elections. So it seems that given that the United States are a federal republic, that there still exists a Supreme Court and other courts, that there still is some kind of a Republican Party, and there still is a Congress. There are some checks on executive power.
Yeah. I would say we're talking thin at best. I think I might even go as far as to say that's a little optimistic. Yeah, there's tension within the Republican Party to a certain degree. Yeah, of course, there's policy debates going on. But Trump is, he demands loyalty, and loyalty above all else. And if there's any sense of rebellion or differences that might impede his objectives, he'll come hard. He'll come down hard, and he has come down hard. I'll give you an example of this, by the way. Joni Ernst put up resistance about Pete Hegseth becoming the defense secretary. There was a possibility that she might buck it. She might actually go against him. And this was sensed, and within her state, there was, sense that not Trump basically, it was threatened. There was the threats that were coming from the MAGA movement. Basically, you don't toe the line here. We're gonna put up candidates against you in your next election. Basically, Trump approved candidates. This scared her enough because she got a lot of letters, from her constituents, and that was enough for her to back down. Okay, so Trump has a lot of power. Okay, and he's able to move a lot of Republican lawmakers to toe the line when they seem to be going on the wayward side.
But as we have heard, he has a lot of crazy ideas. Taking Greenland, now taking Gaza, and taking Gaza after Gaza is ethnically cleansed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Making Canada the 51st U.S. state.
Right. Yeah.
So a lot of crazy ideas, no?
Right.
Can we expect the Republicans and even the Army, the U.S. Army, to not obey? If, for instance, if Trump says to the Army, let's go, and to the Congress, let's go and take Greenland, occupy Greenland, can we expect that the Army chiefs say, Mr. President, that is a crazy and idea that we will not fulfill?
Yeah. The thing is that in his first term, this is where there's a difference in his first term and in this second term. um, is that in his first term he didn't start out so quickly, right? He didn't swamp the system with a bunch of executive orders. He didn't have, he was selecting people that especially military people in the military, people with long histories in the military, as part of his cabinet, and they had independent minds. His selections now are not that way. Okay, the Hegseth is not going to buck. President Trump says whatever, he's going to salute him and say, yes, sir. He's going to do it. Okay.
Okay, but army generals.
Yeah. As long as he has it staffed on the executive level, and the people who are assisting him and telling him what he wants to hear, basically, the people below the executive management of the military, are going to have to basically just do what is necessary, do what is told, asked of them. Okay, that's their job. They are not there to question the president. Now, of course, a chief of staff who was an ex-military man under the first administration. That person bucked, the tide as much as he could. He stayed off, tried to, and there was a revolving, by the way, firings, another person, but there was always some resistance there. Now I think things are much more pacified than they ever were under the first administration. So I don't think there's a lot of guardrails here that will prevent, if Trump wants to actually do that, most likely it's going to happen. There's going to be an attempt to do it.
Okay, but does Trump have a clear agenda? Does he have a coherent point of view on anything?
Yeah. Well, that's a question I couldn't. It'd be difficult for me to answer that question. I think that he does. I think that his mind is such that he takes in information, okay, but he doesn't take. I don't think he has the patience to go through a long document. Okay, so I think he gets bits and pieces of information. He gets, he looks at history, and he might get bits and pieces of that and gets a sense of what it was. For example, what a president did in the past. He has certain inspirations. He's inspired by certain presidents in the past, history. America First itself was coined from the past. Obviously, he knew that. McKinley, he knows that he loves tariffs, for example. Okay, that he tried to extend American imperial, American, he tried to. There was an imperial thrust to that administration. He knows that Jackson, for example, is another, President Jackson, that he was. He has a general idea of, his administration, but it's general. And I make this really, general, because if you look at McKinley, for example, at the time after he had, annexed Hawaii, and then took over, basically intervened in the Spanish-American War, and then took over the Philippines and Guam. He had some reservations afterwards, okay, about taking on this extra, as Trump would say, real estate. And this was a confounding thing. How are we going to be able to, maintain peace in these countries? And indeed, with the Philippines, it was a long-standing war that resulted, in the Philippines, civil unrest, civil war, really, where many died. So, Trump probably doesn't know that part of the history. Okay. He's not. So what I'm saying here is he has a sense of his own, I think, his ideological, if you want to call it that, ideological ideas or visions. But I think that they're inspired or by shall we say, a caricatured view of the past
if we have a person that is unchecked in having all this power, and demands loyalty and gets loyalty from
Yes.
whole
Yes.
system.
Yep.
And on the other hand, that same person is absolutely uneducated,
Yeah.
without any worldview, coherent
Uh,
worldview. What can
uh,
come out of that, all of that?
yeah. I think he has, I think he, I don't think he has some real coherent worldview, but I do think he has an idea of what he wants to do.
Mm,
Okay. Because he's alluding to the past. And even though it's a caricatured view of the past, it's not a mature view, a mature historical review of the past.
mm,
He has an idea of what he wants to do. He wants to bring America back to America first sort of agenda back in the 1920s, but he fuses that with, for example, the late 19th century view of an imperial America. So his view is that yes, America first. We don't want to be involved now. The Gaza situation, that's an exception there,
mm,
a big one. Okay, and so that one there, I'm trying to square it with trying to make sense of an ideological.
mm,
Uh, but basically, America staying in its own hemisphere, having control over its own hemisphere, trying to extend its influence, extend its territory. Greenland is an example. Panama Canal is an example. This is very late 19th century view of American imperialism, and within confines. And America first, America has certain interest in the Western Hemisphere, and it also should withdraw from the rest of the world as much as it can. But again, this is all fluid. And Trump, you're right. Trump doesn't have a real steadfast, coherent ideology, because Gaza is an example. He's come to terms, at least to a degree, from the last time I was reading, that if America is given mineral rights within Ukraine, certain lands, that he will then support Ukrainian continue armaments to Ukraine. So there's a transactional aspect to his personality as well, right? Um, let's come to a deal. Let's come to an agreement. Okay. Um, threaten and then come to an agreement. But then again, you don't know whether this is some sort of tactic that he's using, okay, or whether this is something that is more steadfast as a fiat, basically. This is what we're gonna. This is what I want, and this is how it's gonna happen. Um, Canada and Mexico just recently, right? Tariffs, one day, then they weren't because there was an agreement, that this would happen, and then there's a 30-day delay, right?
okay.
So yeah, so anyway, with what your question is regard to a person who demands loyalty, doesn't really have an ideology, coherent ideology to speak of. Um, I think I would focus on his desire for absolute loyalty. I think that is, I mean, you can have a coherent ideology and have, and demand absolute authority, and that's not good, right? It could be an ideology be poisonous. So I think it's the absolute loyalty aspect that really scares me. Okay, because I think that he does not like anything that might go counter to what he has stated. Um, and at the same time, and this is the ironic thing, at the same time that he does not want that, he is usually receptive to the last person who speaks to him. He has a tendency to be influenced very easily. So there is this kind of paradox going on here. Absolute loyalty, but at the same time, if you get his ear, hey, you might be able to have a great amount of influence in the administration. Just as long as you have that ear, if that ear is right close by, you think his wife would have a lot of influence in that way. But I think that's again another topic.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
So on the international level, is he going to demand to destroy NATO alliance?
Yeah. I think that, well, he's already increased the need for NATO to meet the 2% threshold of defense as part of the budget to 5%. This shows you the sort of unpredictable mercurial nature, right? He just picks it out. 3% increase, over 2.5 times more of the federal of the budget, just to go. Now, that thing gives you an idea of, and because he does connect that with America's support for NATO, right? You don't meet it, then maybe our support isn't going to be there. America's support's not going to be there. So I to answer your question, I don't is to not answer your question. I don't know. I don't know where NATO will stand. Is it possible that America could withdraw from NATO? Yeah, I think that's possible. I think that's distinctly possible under Trump. At the same time, it's possible that he won't do that. So it's hard to know.
On the one hand, we have a person that is fulfilling its promises and is pretty predictable in that manner, but also totally unpredictable.
Yeah, that's the thing. You cannot pin him down. Right? And the thing is that it's not. There's the whole psychology of it all, and I don't. That again, is something that I think is. I guess it's disturbing, right? Because I think let's go. I'm going to go back to the very question that you asked me when you said, "Are you fearful?" Okay, is your fear still there? I'll give you one example of this, a big one, and it's something that I had in my mind much earlier, way back. I mean, this is something I was afraid that, hey, I'll bet that Trump will try to run for a third term, that he'll try to stay in power, that he does not want to leave this office. The only way he'll leave this office is on his death. Right now, I mean, he's been bringing it up a lot about the possibility of running for a third term. Now, this is against the Constitution, the 22nd Amendment of the Constitution. And people say, well, it's a non-starter. There's no way. It's clear he can't do it. Okay, but there are acolytes within the House of Representatives who are, pushing for this. Trump has brought it up more than once, multiple times. Among other Republicans, like Mike Johnson, who is the House Speaker. The thing is that it doesn't prevent him from running for president. It prevents him from taking the office of president.
Okay.
So he can run for president, and if he does well, okay, then the popular support for him will be there. And then how do you just say, okay, but the Constitution says he can't? What are you going to do? Go against the masses that are saying, we want this guy. Okay. Now you have a conflict, right? The Constitution, traditional, conventional, is saying no. But the masses are yearning for him. So, right now there's already violations of the Constitution that are already, well, I shouldn't say that. Let's say it's pretty clear to me that already the Constitution is being challenged. You look at natural born citizenship. Okay, born on the territory of the U.S. that you are a citizen, but in the Constitution says this. Yes, 14th Amendment says yes, you are. Yet Trump is signed an executive order that basically says that basically wants to get rid of this.
Yeah, but the courts disputed it already.
The courts have disputed it. Yes, but what I'm talking about here, yes, I know they are.
But he's pushing for a constitutional reform.
the point is that he is not beyond challenging the constitutional nature. I mean, look what happened with the J6, with January 6th.
Mm.
Okay, and the pardoning, that's the big one too. That is that pardoning of all of the insurrectionists, including those who committed violent acts against police officers, where there were deaths. Okay, now if you get the picture here, this is being brought up as far as a possible third term, in the sense that, you know, and setting and pitting the masses up against what the Constitution says, and what's happened in the past regarding January 6th insurrection, regarding the challenge in the Constitution on the 14th Amendment, as well as the freeze on the budget, on the federal budget, which, by the way, we haven't talked about, but that also has a big impact on people's lives.
Yeah.
That has already been passed by Congress and it's been proved, yet the president is freezing it, which is it seems to me quite clear. If you look at the Constitution, it is unconstitutional. Looking at the first,
as we said, courts disputed this also, no? So the courts are here in check.
Well, yeah, but you know, the thing is that what are we talking about here? What really does? I mean, to the math, for example, in a democracy, if we're talking here about a third term, does a democracy, is it defined by the Constitution, or is it defined by the will of the people? Or, you know, when those are brought up and as a conflict, basically, okay, and considering what I'm seeing now, okay, in regard to challenging conventional norms, it puts me at considerable ill ease.
Okay.
And
unfortunately, Zoom tells us we are
45 minutes. Yeah.
We have less than a minute. Thank you. We will see each other again and discuss this.
Yes. Okay. Very good. Yeah. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.